If you have a number, do you want to add that to next month?
I can do that.
He's
Thanks.
One more.
yeah, you're probably right.
Um, I lost it. No, you're-
Wonderful.
can't remember. Scholarship something.
What'd you say? Sorry.
I was gonna talk to you guys about something with scholarships, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, next Thursday. Sunday's Easter, right?
Yes.
Thursday, they turn in their scholarships that evening. Would you two be available to come and inventory the scholarships for Foundation?
Next Thursday. Just depends what time, but yeah.
I think I might work night shift that night. I have to check. I'll let you know.
Okay,
I'll-
because I want to get it done and so we can get copies made. I mean, we don't need all three of us, so if you
What
can't,
time does it, do they turn them in by?
they have to have them turned in by noon on Thursday.
Okay,
But I go teach in Lewiston at 1:30. So I'm like picking them up and then I'm going right over to Lewiston to teach.
let me check.
Okay, all right, it is 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I will need a motion to declare this an open meeting.
I make a motion to declare this an open meeting.
I second.
Motion by Bobby, second by Hannah. Julia?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jason, yes. Hannah?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
And Hope.
Yes.
We are in an open meeting. We welcome our visitors to the meeting tonight. As per the law, the Board of Education does adhere to the Open Meeting Act, and a copy of that act is posted on the wall to my right. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance to that policy and the Nebraska's Open Meetings Act. We'll review the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Hope, second by Hannah. Hope, do you have any questions?
No.
Hannah, questions?
No.
The rest of the board, do you have any questions regarding the open, or the agenda?
No.
All right, going ahead and voting. Mark?
Yes.
Jason, yes. Hannah?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Motion carried. All right. Public comments. Anybody? Anybody? No? Okay, we'll just go on then. Employment. So we have approved recommendations for employment. Cheyenne Farlow, Madison Lang, Shanna Russell for full-time employment at the beginning of the school year 2025-2026, and Donald Jacobs employment as interim teacher for 2025-2026. I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations for employment for Cheyenne Farwell, Madison Lang, Shanna Russell, and Donald Jacobs for school year 2025-2026.
Brian, on these notes, do I need to write out all their names?
I think we could just say as printed on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it would be, and then she can just copy and paste
Okay.
it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I will second.
Motion by Jason, second by Hannah. I don't have any discussion. Hannah?
Yes. I mean, no. I don't have any discussion.
Okay.
Sorry, yes.
Anybody else?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Exactly what will Shanna Russell's,
So Shayna is gonna be elementary special education.
she's the one that will be getting the endorsement,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
And this is the
Yes.
significant other of,
Of Jake Craig, yes. I don't think they're engaged yet, but it sounds like it's imminent.
okay, that was my only question.
Awesome. All right, going on with the vote. Jason, yes. Hannah?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Mark?
Just a quick question. Is this a typical year, like, for turnover wise, or is this high? Just out of being new to the board type of,
I would say it's a little high.
is it?
It seems a little high. Last year, we just had two, and they were both retirements. We've had more. I've heard of some districts that have like massive turnover this year. For example, Fairbury, they're replacing 20 teachers this year,
Jeez.
and a high school principal. Just my future, the district I'm going to is they don't have any as of right now. So it just kind of, some years are high and some years are low, but I don't, yeah, I would say it's above average for us.
Yes.
Alrighty. Going on to employment B, approve the request for resignation or retirement for Mason Admonson and Mandela Jansen at the end of the 2024-2025 school year, and Mr. Donald Jacobs at the end of the 2025-2026 school year.
I make motion with regret to approve the request of recognition for retirement of Mr. Admonson, Ms. Jansen, and Mr. Jacobs as printed.
Second.
Motion by Bobby, second by Mark. Any comments?
With Mr. Jacobs, that's how we have to do it is.
Well,
I mean, that's how we've done it the last couple of years, so I'm just.
had we
clarifying.
known 7 years ago, 6 years ago when he retired that he'd still be with us, we would have probably just put him on a normal contract. Sorry, I'm just checking a message there. We need to put him, we need to do it that way because there always was the understanding was gonna be an interim type situation that way we know, because once you put someone on a regular contract, they are employed there until they have all the rights, you know, of the going through the due process and the right to a hearing and all those things. And there's really no way to get around that, no smooth way other than because you can't give them a contract that says it's going to end at the end of this year. It contradicts law, and you can't have a contract that contradicts law. So the only really workaround that you can do for that is to have a contract that's the same contract any other teacher would get, and then a resignation letter that goes along with that. And we've done that now for, this would be, I think, the 7th year. Will next year be your 7th year, Mr. Ness? Sixth. So it'll be the 6th year we've done it since he's retired as a principal. And of course, he's helped us out in a lot of tight spots. He helped us initially, I think, with technology. Actually, initially it was math, and then technology, and then science, and now special education. Middle school sped, this was the 2nd year. Yeah, and this will still be the sped, it'll be sped in the reconfigured situation. So now he's going to be doing that MTSS interventionist, and that, he does have a sped endorsement. He initially did the coursework to get the sped endorsement, but now the Department of Ed has extended the guidance to take the test. Rather than continue to take coursework, he's gonna look at taking the test. But that's important for a couple reasons. One, it's very important to have someone in a position that's certified to teach that. I mean, that was something that came out through our strategic planning process, that we don't want people teaching out of endorsement. But secondly, it's especially important in special education because of, you can't code that as a qualified reimbursable special education expense person doing it isn't sped endorsed. It fulfills the letter of the law under Rule 51, but it's not a qualified special ed endorsement. And we want that reimbursement because, as we'll talk about here a little later on in the meeting, that's reimbursed at 80%. So we don't want to leave money on the table. And it can be an issue with maintenance of effort. So we just, that's good that he's been willing to do that. And that remains something we'll do going forward.
Anybody else? All right, we'll go ahead and we'll vote. Hannah?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jason, yes. Motion carried. All right, we'll go on with informational reports. We'll start with Mrs. Beleka with the counselor's report.
Okay. Starting with college visits, spring is always a really busy time, so we've had to move some things around. But on April 1st, we took our first visit to Creighton. It was a lot of fun. The kids really loved how beautiful the campus was. They were in Omaha, but didn't feel like they were in Omaha, so they really liked it and will definitely be back. Our Bryan College of Health Sciences visit got postponed to May 1st. There was like a conflict on Bryan's end. April 17th, we're going to that National Guard event. 8th graders are going on to their visit to SEC Lincoln and Duncan. And then unfortunately on April 25th, the visit to UNO Healthcare Symposium got canceled because it's also district music. So hopefully we can look at going to that next year. Dual credit informational night for sophomores was Monday, March 24th. That was for sophomores and sophomore families to learn about all of our dual credit options. 16 students and their families RSVP'd, so there was a presentation, the kids were able to do their applications, which makes registration for SEC classes so much smoother. With the grant that I have through Education Quest, that meal was provided at no charge to students and their families. The 25-26 schedule, class meetings have started, so it's been very, very busy in my office. I work through meetings on an individual basis with each student. We talk about graduation requirements, what do they want their schedule to look like, future goals. So the goal is for each student to have their schedule before they leave for Christmas vacation. Not Christmas vacation, summer vacation, sorry. FAFSA completion, really pleased about this. Out of the 19 seniors, I have 19 seniors done with their FAFSA. So that has been huge. Again, we just have some prizes for the seniors who complete that with some drawing. So very, very happy. The first year of the Universal FAFSA, we have 100% completion. So happy about that. Dual credit welding and CNA, we are really, really fortunately, we're gonna be able to keep offering that. We have 8 current juniors will be seniors. They will be completing their certification in the 25-26 school year. So some of them have got that at little or no cost to them, and they're able to enter industry right away with that certificate. I have 4 sophomores will be juniors who will be starting the certification next school year. And then exciting news from the CNA front, Kelsey Johnson has got approval again to teach the CNA class. 6 students have expressed interest, so that is up from 2 from last year up to 6. So working on polling students to see if they want an 8-week class or a 16-week class. Scholarships again, super busy time in my office. Jason and Mary met with the seniors. Those foundation scholarships are due towards the end of April after Easter break, so very, very busy. And then SEC registration for those classes started April 7th. Registration has gone really smoothly. I have the kids meet with me at 2 different timeframes, one to decide their classes and the other to register. And then again, the Education Foundation really makes these classes very affordable for our students, which is great. So spring is always a busy time, so in my office. So any questions on this? Okay, yeah.
All right, going on to Mr. Niss, principal's report.
Okay, we'll start with the academic related information. So we had the spring band and choir concert, and we had it at the South Park this year. We'd been approached about it, and we thought it was kind of a neat idea to try it in a different location, especially because that's turned out really nice. And I was a little worried earlier in the day because it was like in the 40s, but by the time the concert came around, even though it was a little windy, it was at least around 60. So it was, other than being just a little bit chilly, it was really nice. And down in the bowl, I thought it worked a lot better than I was anticipating. So we were worried about the choir being able to be heard all the way back to the seats, but really it went really well. So the feedback so far, it's been really informal. We haven't sent out surveys or anything like that, but the feedback that I've informally heard from parents and Ann and Laura was that they really enjoyed doing it. So I think at this point, we'd like to explore doing something again there next year. I don't know if it'd be specifically the spring concert, but that was a good one to do there. So I wanna come back to these next 2 points, circle back to those two at the end. I wanted to touch on class schedule changes for next year, just I've alluded to it a couple times before. If you look at the next page and don't laugh right away because it's like 0.5 on, I'm sorry. I was trying to print this out and, I printed it all out and then I thought, there's no way I can see that, so, I can send anybody a digital copy that wants it. So, for the time being, really, I just wanted to focus your attention on a couple of things. So, every year, we try to adjust our schedule in slight ways to make sure that we're maximizing the opportunity for the kids. One thing that we've been working toward that I talked about at the last meeting was trying to schedule like a common study hall or intervention time. And so if you notice now, there's not 8 periods in the day anymore, there's 9. We accomplished that by changing homeroom and subtracting 2 minutes from class periods. I wouldn't say that we took that decision lightly. Taking instructional time out of any class is something we have to really carefully consider, and there were some teachers that had some reservations about it. So it's something we've talked through. The teachers that were hesitant, I think we've discussed it enough that they're comfortable trying it, and we'll see how this goes next year. I personally think that the intervention time, the common time at the end of the day is probably gonna provide us more value for the kids. But we'll see. So I feel good about this. I wouldn't be trying to push this forward if I didn't. So what we did was we shortened homeroom time, which basically gives us enough time for the kids to grab their breakfast if we continue to do the grab and go style like this. Grab their breakfast, go to homeroom. So we do lunch count, we do attendance, we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we do the announcements. When I started here, that was done in first period, and it just ate that much time out of the first period classes. So whatever class was first period was losing some instructional minutes. So we made the change to add homeroom to try to book in the day a little bit. But we've had a 17-minute homeroom. The intention was we would try to do some interventions then, since we didn't have a common intervention time, but 17 minutes isn't enough to do anything. We just get started, and then so it kind of fell by the wayside because I think teachers were trying it, getting frustrated because there wasn't enough time to do it well. And so really it's more of a logistical thing. Get kids in the building, kind of have that hard start to the day, then get off to classes. So we shortened it to 9 minutes, which I think is the minimum we can do and get all of those things accomplished. And then at the end of the day, we added that 26-minute intervention and study hall time. So if you look at, just look at that first one, and I've tried to update names for next year, so Emily, soon to be Banks, Emily Aguinaw. So if you look at her last 2 periods, 8 and 9, and you'll see that down with a few other staff members too. Those are staff members that in some way are responsible for junior high PE or coaching. And so you'll see it extends over 8th period and 9th period. So our intent right now is to allow junior high kids to practice for an extended period of time. We've always had a shorter practice than most schools around us, and it's challenging for a variety of reasons, whether it's transportation after school or our limited facilities as far as gym space goes for volleyball or basketball. But this will let us at least extend that a little bit more. It's not, the hour and a half that I think some coaches would like to see, but it's better. And it'll also give us in that 9th period time, it'll also give us time for common study hall and common intervention time. So even if there's junior high kids that are in sports, that 8th period is the designated time. That 9th period is kind of like extended time for practice. If they are struggling or need support, they would still be able to go during that intervention time. If they're failing classes, we would assign them to go in during that intervention time. So still, that's where we hope to provide a little bit of accountability and hopefully a little bit of an incentive for the kids, kind of like we do with the ineligibility list. But this, I think, is in a more like a restorative, productive way instead of a gotcha. Like we really are pulling them to try to give them the support they need, not just to hold them out. So there are a few changes, and if you, like I said, if you want me to send you the digital copy, I will. But you can. There are a few changes on here, like if you'll. Notice there's a study skills class for 6th and 7th graders. We're also exploring in that time, because we have a little bit of flexibility in that time, we're also exploring and or looking into exploratory Spanish for some of the junior high kids. Right now we only offer that as Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 for sophomores and juniors. And exploratory Spanish is just like the other exploratory classes, where the idea is to provide them a fun experience that can expose them to the content in a way that might make them want to be involved in it a little bit more. So rather than actually being responsible for specific content and skills, which by the time they're doing Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, that's how it works. So, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. But I just wanted to bring it up. If anybody has any questions or thoughts, I'm always happy to hear them. I put on here next, back to the first page, I put on there next the 2025 professional development schedule because I wasn't sure if that was something Mr. Routinghouse would mention or not. We had our planning meeting with the ESU staff recently, and so we've worked through our priorities with them and we created our professional development schedule for next year in association with the ESU. So the things that we as a district are still solely responsible for, we still will have to schedule and fill in, but we've got kind of the bones of our schedule for all of next year laid out. We plan to continue with the priorities that we've had, so continuing the math acceleration and expanding that into the high school more, continuing the ELA curriculum work we've done, reviewing curriculum, and we plan to continue that into the high school as well. Also the core teaching rubric, which we've made our tool for formal observations. Now, we plan to continue that professional development just because of the curriculum projects. The elementaries had a little bit more exposure. And so being respectful of everybody's time, we need to continue it for everybody, but we've got some focused professional development in middle school, high school for those teachers for that for next year too. On to activity stuff. We know it's spring, so we've got golf going, we've got track going, we've got quiz bowl going. There's, then trap too, speaking of things that the kids are doing. Nope, that quiz bowl information's wrong. So that's from last year. But MUDECA's quiz bowl is coming up. Junior high, I think this is what I meant to type when I was doing that. Junior high, so we have our PC invite for junior high, and then we have MUDECA's coming shortly after that. It's not, or we just had MUDECA's at Tri-County this weekend. So the junior high kids have been busy. They've had the HTRS meet that was here last Thursday, then they had MUDECA's at Tri-County, then they've got the meet here, or the meet at Lewiston on Tuesday, I believe, and then the meet here on Thursday. And the one on Thursday is, it's one of our 2 invites. It's our bigger one. The high school one's always small by design. Like, we want that to be an informal one before conference so the kids can have plenty of opportunity to compete. We can enter more kids. We're doing unlimited entries for the teams that are here this year. For this one, for the junior high one with 11 teams, we have to keep it a little bit more tighter. So we do 3 entries like that. That's pretty typical. But those are always fun days here. Onto the high school track then, this year, it just, the way the cards fell, it's kind of a great run for us. We'll have our high school invite here, and then we'll have MUDECA's here, and we'll have Pioneer Conference here, and we'll have district track here too, all this year. So
Wow.
if you're Mr. Strong, like, you're pretty happy about all of that. So it's kind of neat how it fell. The reason it did that, we typically rotated MUDECA's and Pioneer Conference, but with Lewiston joining with Tri-County leaving and Lewiston joining the mix for hosting conference, the intention was to give them the junior high meet on their first year so they could kind of dip their toes in the water, and then they'll host the high school meet next year. So we'll just alternate with Lewiston, junior high and high school conference meets every year. So we'll always have one of those here.
But Lewiston didn't want to be in the rotation on MUDECA's, right? Or are they now?
At that point, they didn't, but I believe they want to now. Yeah, I think hosting track meets is a big thing. It takes a lot of people. It's like schools that host big wrestling meets. It takes a ton of people to do, and so it can be kind of daunting at first. And so I think that's where they were at. They recognize they have a nice facility and they want to host things, but I think they wanted to make sure they could do it well. So then just a couple of miscellaneous notes. Prom last weekend, which went really well. I always joke that the first time I hear somebody say prom, it ruins the rest of my year. But it went really well. The sponsors did a great job, and the kids did a great job this week, decorating and cleaning up afterward too. So it went really smoothly. Tom Puhala did the meal. That was really nice. It all worked out great. So, and then they went bowling for post prom. So it was a good weekend for all of that. I just wanted to touch on the strategic plan committees, nothing major, but we have started by having those meetings. I think the first one, it was great to do that, and it was kind of an eye opener for me. I realized some things that we needed as far as structure to make them run a little bit better. I invited the leader of each subcommittee and the recorder of each subcommittee, those people that have like responsibilities in each meeting. They're going to, in 2 days, we're gonna meet with a person that's coming to the ESU to do some work this summer. I think it's something that could help kind of focus us and guys to make sure we're using our time the best we can. Everybody's busy, so we need to make sure that we're being effective with the time we've got. So, if we can jump back up now, we could, Mrs. Gira came, so we could just touch base about a couple of things. First, because she's been so involved in this, I wanted to mention the Golden Readers Contest. That's coming up on May 2nd, the same date as Donkey Basketball at night. So if you want to go to Golden Readers and then come here for Donkey Basketball, it sounds like a good day. We've got 27 kids going between 3rd and 7th grade, so it's great to see how excited they are about it and great to see how many kids participating. And then specifically, I wanted her to maybe speak to this point a little bit more. We've been working on a school store for a while and we wanted to do it right, so we've, there's a few components to this, and please elaborate, but we received a donation last year from Rand Schaefer, and specifically focusing on areas of CTE, career and technical ed. And so we recently had investment in vocational ag, FFA. We had within the school gotten a couple of grants for computers, and so we, or for the tech area. So we kind of turned towards business. And so this is an idea that we've talked about quite a few times. We had a lot of interest in wanting to have our own school store, and we just hadn't quite figured out how to do it yet. So this gave us an opportunity and a little bit of funding to make that happen. So we've, I think, been really thoughtful about the Perkins grant funds that we've applied for over the last few years, and it's allowed us to kind of get this collection of cool equipment that we can use, whether it's a sublimation printer or a commercial vinyl cutter or, you know, the heat press, I mean, on and on, which you can talk more about. But we finally have the school store open for a trial run. I checked earlier, and what our plan is for it to open tomorrow, and then through the 29th, we're gonna do a trial run with just a limited supply of items. We did blankets and
Let's see, jackets, windbreakers, blankets, a different kind of blanket, you want that picnic blankets that are like vinyl, or not plastic, but
polyester on one side,
yeah,
so water
polyester,
resistant.
yeah. T-shirts, duffel bags, some really neat duffel bags, Nike, the event bags, that you have to have if you go to events.
Things that are handy if you forget stuff and you're at a track meet, which we happen to host quite a few of, so. So, on our website, I was just gonna pull it up again just to see if it had started to populate yet, but we, as part of our new website, we have the RevTrack web store. The cool thing about that is, as part of the fee that we paid them, they'll build this for us. So, we need to provide them the information, and then they build it so it looks like a more professionally done website. So if you go into the school website, you'll see, I think Mr. Rottinghouse might be trying to pull it up here. You can see the RevTrack web store that you can go to. It's just a quick link right at the top. And then there, behind that, yeah, just go ahead and click X on that. There you go.
Scroll down.
The bottom right is the school store link. The classes that Mrs. Gira had, they're running this. So they've been working on this for a while. The products, the marketing, the name of the store. So they decided to name the store the Arrowhead. And so that link, that design that they created is the icon for the school store, and that's what Mr. Rottinghouse clicked on. Now, when you go here, this is where hopefully tomorrow, all the product will be populated, and so people can place orders through this site then. I say it's a trial run because obviously if we have a school store, we want it to be open all the time, and people can buy stuff on demand when they want it. And because we have the equipment here, we have the ability for the classes, so accounting, personal finance, marketing, even intro to business, to all have their own component of the school store. And we have the ability to take the orders and actually fulfill the orders here, but the kids doing this. And so, since Mrs. Gira is the one that's actually doing all that work, I thought she would be a little bit more informed to tell us about. So do you want to tell us kind of where you are now and what the kids have done at this point?
Sure. So, I think the reason why it looks blank is it's not up. I've looked several times today. So, yeah, it's been a goal. We've been trying to, we're thinking in the back of our heads, this would be an awesome thing, and so finally. And so where we're at right now, so we're studying entrepreneurship and marketing, and most of the kids, when they get their hands on this equipment, they absolutely love it. And you can figure out right away. I mean, they attack it, they love it, so, and the hands-on element of it. And then the creative part of it, some of them think they're not creative, and then they figure out, oh no, really, they are, more than what they give themselves credit for. So, if you guys watch for it because it's going to look really neat. So I got to preview it this morning. I don't know if you
I didn't
got to see it, but it's going to look really good. So we had to go through, 2 seconds after I got here, I called April and says, all right, where are we at? And so I went downstairs and we had to review it and we found some small things, sent it back, right back to them. She sent an email. And you're going to, so hopefully then tomorrow it will be up. You're going to see some social media posts. So we're going through the advertising, you know, and it's a good experience for them to go through, okay, so what did this cost us for the item, and then everything we're going to put into it, and their time, and then how much of a markup. And this is going to really be a good learning experience then for next year, because we're learning a lot. And so we can carry over into next year. Let's see, so
What else?
we're waiting right now.
So what do you think next steps? What are some things that, so we know we're getting the website going, but what's some other things that the kids are working on right now, or ideas that they have?
So promotional ads, and it's great because they randomly will come into my room, hey, Mrs. Guerra, I had another idea. And they've got really good ideas, so I want them to come up with as many of the ideas as possible. I mean, we're guiding them, and we have talked a lot about it, but they come up with these great ideas, and it's like, perfect, that's great. So just today, a couple more kids came in and they had a couple more ideas of things that they want to do. So since we have so many track meets at home, they came up with some great ideas that we can do really quick during the school day to go down and promote it to people in the stands.
There's a student that came in, she came in after school today to talk to me, and there was a student that was already in my office trying to convince me to let them brand some water bottles with the school store design that they could go give away for free at the track meet. So it's great that they're taking initiative. Once you really get them start thinking and they are taking ownership in the whole idea, then they start getting creative because they wanna make it great. You know, we've talked with them a lot about how that's, you know, very visible for our school. Like this, that shows, when they're taking this stuff out, it shows our ability to, not only to create these, but to market them, and the thought that we put into how they look and the quality. And so it says a lot about how we do things. And so it's really neat to see them take a lot of pride in it. And even today, there was another kid that came in and was talking about an idea that they wanted to do with it. And then it immediately went to how she thought that we could incorporate some younger kids, because it would be a really cool thing for them to be involved in. And so it's just nice to see, since this has kind of been a slow start for a while, we've been doing the behind the scenes stuff. It's nice to see the kids latching on to it so well. And so we're excited to see it come up on the website too. But one thing I should have mentioned, Mrs. Gear had the kids do surveys, and so whether it was community or students or staff, there were people that were surveyed and to give ideas about what kind of products they would want. And so we'd like to, by next year, we'd like to have a spot in the school set up with a, you know, what are they called? But essentially just a display of the items, and we would like to have some stock on hand. So if people want to come to a basketball game and they want to buy something, or come to a football game and they want to buy something, they can get it right there. And
I was curious when you said fulfillment, so is there a warehouse that is like shipping for this stuff for you guys, or is this stuff that you have here that you're actually gonna have the students process labels and shipping and
so far, our plan is to have the students do everything. I mean, for it to be I've always said that whenever we have, like, even when we had the cable guy thing, whenever we've got an opportunity to do something here, the kids should be doing it. It's a school, it's supposed to be for them. So like this, we've been at this point, I'd say probably the thing we've been the heaviest hand on is researching, because we wanna, when we are trying to get stuff, we want it for a good price, we want it from a reliable supply. So other than that, you know, the kids are really kind of taking it from there. So the shipping, we foresee that being the same way. So.
do you guys have an accounting software or something that the accounting side that you're plugging data into, you know, like costs and sales side?
Not yet. That's one of the shifts that's taking place with this. So with the new computers teacher, we're shifting course loads a little bit. And Mrs. Guerra, who has an interest and a background with accounting, is going to now do that as well. So we can keep this consistent with personnel for the school store too. So that's a summer to fall piece too.
Do you guys ever have any questions or anything like I know a guy that,
Awesome.
You know that.
Sounds great, yeah.
can probably help, so.
Yeah.
if you're-
Thanks.
Is there a
Navigate through
certain,
it.
oh, sorry, Mark.
No, go
Is there a certain spot or section or anything that like profits are gonna go towards?
Right now, the way that we see this going is we see this hopefully being like a self-sufficient program. So when the store does receive profits, then it will go back into supply and
Sure.
we've also.
To buy more inventory.
Yeah, and we've also talked if we one thing we've discussed is what do we do during the summer when people submit orders? And we've said, you know, obviously one option is to say the store's closed during the summer. Another option would be if we get to a point where there is a little bit of a fund in there, then maybe that's something that students could be paid for during the, you know, for their time during the summer to fulfill those orders. So we see it all staying within that program.
Nice. It's awesome, actually.
And then there's one other thing too that I wanted to throw in.
I'm sure there's a lot, I'm sure I'm forgetting plenty,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's right.
There was
Thinking of
nothing
things.
like this when I was a kid, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Me neither, it's awesome. So this company that sets up the website for us, I'm told that they will provide me a spreadsheet showing what everybody has ordered, and we can do invoices through them. I haven't done it yet, I haven't seen it, so that's all I can tell you about it. But that will be handy and it'll be easy to tie it in with the accounting part. And then we don't have any software that we're using, but I have one student who, she has experience with, she helps at home, helps her mom with the family business. And so she does book work, like perfect job for you. So we're figuring out what works best for everybody, like what are you interested in? So we're gonna be busy and we're gonna have an assembly line and have different people doing different things. And
Does the company who did your website, do they have, like, building like a shopping cart as well, like to take credit cards?
Yep.
you'll see when it's up. You'll be
Yeah,
able
and that should all be functional as soon as, like, hopefully tomorrow. We hope it's late today, but
to-
yeah,
Not stressful at all.
not stressful. One last thing I should mention, the kids have been making posters and stuff to promote the store within the school. And so I just noticed, I didn't even know you did any over here, but when I came in the door, I noticed there was one right inside the door. And it said something about dancing, so it lost me then, but you can look at it when you go. If you're like me, you probably just walk right by it most of the time so make sure on your way out, you just peek. It's just a good example of one of the things they've been doing, so cool. Well, thanks. I know that was a little longer than normal, but it was worth talking through. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Bert. All right, Brian.
All right, so, got enrollment numbers on there. One thing none of us had in our report is I just, quick comment that state assessment, is going on right now, so our INSCAS, we've got some done, and I think most of the ELA is done, and math is probably, I think it's this week and next week, so that's going on right now. I don't really have any information besides that, but hopefully, in the coming months, we will. Wanted to spend a little time talking about, to Mark's point, we've had a little bit above average turnover in staffing this year, and kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of the people that have been hired and some of the decisions. Something else that we've had a little more of, really, and I'm probably wrong in saying this, but we've had a few internal transfers, and we've done that sort of thing before in the time that I've been here, but it's usually been something where the administration has come to the teacher and said, hey, we would like to move you here. I can't think of a time where we've really had a situation where we posted and then there was a desire, a formal request to move after that. So kind of wanted to talk through that process as well. I'd start by saying that, Mr. Niss and I have been in regular communication with Mr. Evans on these staffing decisions. So he's still got a full-time job at his current school, but so he hadn't been able to sit in on the interviews necessarily, but he's been informed and had certainly a say in the process. And so the other comment I would make, and I think I have this noted later on in my report, but and I think I said this last month too, but I just really feel good about the hiring this year. I just feel like our application pool was larger, had more competent applicants than maybe several years. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's a trickle down from maybe the government downsizing, but it's a good thing that we have more applicants, and then the quality of applicants too, I feel like was up. So that I feel good about it. Just a kind of explanation of the process. So March 15th is under state statute is the earliest that a school can require a teacher to say yes or no, whether they're coming back. A few districts out there actually have it in their negotiated agreement that it's later than that. A few of our neighbor schools have that's something you always want to avoid. If you can avoid getting that language in your negotiated agreement, do it. So years ago, we used to wait till this April board meeting to our teachers to resign. And I kind of got burnt on that a few years ago. Felt like that was pushing it too late. And with the teacher shortage, we've moved that up. I've moved that up to March 15th. In fact, I said 8:30 a.m. on March 15th, which happened to be a Saturday this year. I told them I'll come in and meet you at the school if I need to. I need to know. And if you haven't turned in your intent statement, signed intent statement to return by 8:30 on March 15th, I will advertise for your vacancy. Because that window of time, that time of year, just a few hours can be critical. And getting something out there, getting it advertised, and trying to get someone in to interview and potentially offer them a job before someone else comes along and snatches them away, or before their window of opportunity closes because they have their own deadlines to work against. And even if a school will let you out of your contract if you signed it, that school wants that decision ASAP, because then they want to advertise to replace that position, and it's a domino effect. And so there's just really around that mark that anything after the first of the year, it seems like is almost too late to advertise for teachers in the teacher shortage. So time is of the essence that time of year. And so, right after the last board meeting, I got resignation letters. One of them I kind of knew, one of them I didn't know was coming. Mr. Amundson and Ms. Jansen both submitted resignation letters that next day because they had gotten offers the night before at the respective. Mr. A is going to Sterling, and Ms. Jansen is going to Syracuse. And so wish them the best. And we posted those for the reasons I just stated. Those positions were advertised ASAP. I put them, as soon as I find out, I get and put them online because I want to get applications right away. You want to get your postings up at the top of the queue. In the Teach in Nebraska website is where teachers are kind of coached to go. It's kind of that central hiring hub, and I'll even go in every day and save it, so it kicks us up to the top of the hopper, gives us a little more exposure. I think I reported last month too, something I started doing this year was using the Handshake website. I don't know if that played a factor in getting more applications, if that was a secondary way that people found out about it, but I don't know. It's very expensive, especially if you do a promotional. It's like $25 a day which isn't a lot in the bigger scheme of things. That's probably not very much money to spend to get a good person hired. But the question is it useful? But it ended up being several hundreds of dollars that was paid to that advertising. But that is something I think that a lot of teachers are on there, especially young teachers in college. It seems like that's where the college professors are pushing them to get exposure for jobs. And so the only way you can kind of get their attention on there is if you get the paid service rather than the free service. So of course post them for free and then go in and try to promote them to get more exposure from those college age students that are looking to graduate and find jobs. So kind of an rundown of the positions. PE, of course, with Mr. A leaving, that was posted. A few days later, Mr. Brumball expressed interest in it, and when he made that formal request, we decided we want to do that reassignment. And Scott he got his endorsement in Kansas in PE because he did it about the same time I did. And it was because of these new changes of the Department of Ed, now that can transfer in to Nebraska. And so he's got the ability to do that, be an endorsement. So I certainly, can understand, why he has a desire to do that, and that's gonna be good for the district. That created a third grade position, that we posted that right away. And then a few days after that was posted, then we got some, initially, there was discussion about it, but the formal request came about 2 or 3 days later to ask if there could be a couple more transfers. One of those was Mrs. Hoffman, who teaches kindergarten. She used to be a 5th grade teacher. That was her only experience. If anyone's ever been an elementary teacher, it's a big change to go from 5th grade to kindergarten. I'm of the mindset that kindergarten teaching, those lower grades is the hardest job there is. Your patience and your attention just has to be, and I think a kindergarten teacher can teach anything, but it takes a special person to be able to handle littles. And so the opportunity to move to a higher grade presented itself, and so she made that request, and that created a vacancy in kindergarten. And Ms. Coffey had an interest in that, and so she requested that if that became vacated, that she would like to move into that position. And we told them both, we told that we would take their request seriously, but we had to do what was best for kids. And by that time, we'd had a few applications already, posted preschool opening immediately as soon as that formal request came. I think it was a Friday night, I did it yet that night. Never really did get anyone apply for the preschool position. Ultimately, 2 of the people we interviewed, we had 3 really strong applicants. 2 of them had early childhood on their on their certification. We offered it to both of them declined. So we ended up offering the position kindergarten to Madison Lang, which we just approved, and so she will be the kindergarten teacher. Fortunately for Ms. Coffey, we were not able to grant her internal request. I know she's disappointed about that, but hopefully down the road we'll have another opportunity for something like that, and we'll certainly take it seriously. You gotta, at the end of the day, you gotta do what's best for kids in those types of situations, and so we feel like that's what we did in all of these situations. Go ahead.
No,
Sure.
it's okay, I'm just listening to you. So when, like, somebody internally resigns,
Mhm.
do you send an email out to all the teachers?
We have,
So they can know about the posting and apply first, or do they have to learn from it being posted on the website?
We haven't, no, so you would be posting it on the website. I don't
I'm just
think,
curious how that
I don't
works.
think that would be a hard thing to do. It's really not ever been.
Well, I was just
a thing
wondering, so
before
they
this
have
year.
the first opportunity to apply for it.
Mhm.
I didn't know how it worked.
Well, we haven't, but that's certainly something I think we could do down the road.
Yeah, just curious.
Because then it would be hard to just, I guess I would look at it as, it would be hard to say, okay, yes, we can grant yours, but not yours if everybody wasn't given the equal amount of time to
Well-
think about it, and I understand posting it right away,
Mhm.
but I don't know, is that something that could start, I mean, obviously,
It would have to
after
be,
June, you're
right, it would have to be
not
the
here,
next.
but, maybe
Hopefully,
that's
we won't have any
something-
more vacancies between now and the school year.
Sure, but maybe that's something that, we can talk to Mr. Evans about, of if there becomes an opening, that it kind of happens simultaneously that way. If there is something internally that somebody becomes,
And that's something that we need to, I mean, I keep on calling him Dr. Evans. Why am I keep doing that? Mr. Evans. I mean, his policy, or his procedure might be completely different than what Brian's and Derek's is now, and that's, that's up to him
sure,
to be able to do, but yeah, I think.
I think it's
mean,
worth discussing at least,
absolutely.
because then, I don't know,
Well, it helps. What I would caution against is there's some districts that, for example, in their negotiated agreement, it says you have to give first priority to someone internal, and you have to wait X amount, you have to post it, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can allow, fill that position. Problem with that is, it doesn't give you as much flexibility to do what might be in the best interest for the students. And so that would be, I would have reservation with doing something like that. But I don't see any problem with just when you post it, just saying, hey, or it could be a link to the posting, just FYI, and then they know about it.
good communication amongst the entire staff of,
Well, I say it all the time, you can never, ever communicate too much in education. No matter how much you're communicating, you can always do better. You wanna get to a point where people are saying, why do you keep telling me stuff? Because then you know you're doing a good job communicating. All right, other positions we've had, elementary sped, which we talked about, that's Shayna Russell. She's taught for 5 years in Missouri, and she doesn't currently have her sped, but she's willing to get it. And the fact that we'd already hired her significant other, Jake Craig, made this a much more attractive location for her. I know it sounds like we're hiring people out of endorsement, and that, I understand that perks a little bit of concern. It does for me as well. But keep in mind that when that position was open a few years ago, I got no one competent in an endorsement, out of endorsement until November. We had a position open because there wasn't one teacher, let alone one good teacher that applied. And having a good teacher in there that may not be super experienced in special education is way better than having nothing. Especially when you have someone competent, willing to learn, wants to be here, eager. That is huge. I would say the same thing about the infotech position. We hired, willing to get her endorsement. It's a condition of the contract that she has to get that. I just felt really good in that interview too. Like, there's someone who wants to be in this community, wants to be in the school system, has great references in their current job. They're a good teacher. They just don't have experience teaching infotech. A good teacher is do a little work and become a good teacher in pretty much any subject, as long as they can master the subject matter. You know, if you're gonna be a trig teacher, you probably better know math, but if pretty much anything else, a good teacher is motivated to do a good job is the most important thing. And I feel like in all of our positions, we have that.
What's the time frame to have to get the endorsement done by? Does it just depend on?
I think in the contract it says, September 1st,
Okay.
maybe it's August 1st.
Had she applied for that position?
She had expressed interest in leadership, and she knew that we might be looking at another leadership position, which we ultimately didn't do. Jake's mother is Wendy Craig, who's a sped director at ESU 4, and so she had and I had talked to Wendy about it. It was just we were chatting about something else, and she told me about it, and I said, well, it's funny you bring that up. These are some things we have, send them our way. Even if they doesn't work out, we'll still give them an interview, and it worked out, and so, I think down the road, she's pretty young yet, I think down the road, she does want to get into administration, because that's what her master's degree is in, but short term, we'll take advantage of the circumstances. Madison Lang is another one. She's got, has her master's degree in administration, but it's very valuable to her because this is home for her, this community, to work in her school system. What I see out of both of those gals is that they are gonna want to step up and take on leadership roles in the school. And of course, with leadership comes responsibility and management and a little extra stress. And when you have people that are willing to do those sort of things, we've got several of them, but that's great because that means one person's not always doing everything. It's nice when you can spread that balance out and spread that load out. And I see that potential, I see that out of both of those ladies, because they both have those comparable interests. They want those opportunities to get into a leadership role. Then middle school ELA, when Ms. Jansen, Mr. Niss and I had already not so long ago interviewed Cheyenne Farwell. At the time we were looking at a few different things and none of them really matched up with her interests. That's another person who lives in the district, a teacher in the district. We always knew that middle school's English language arts is what she wanted to teach. And she did already sign her intent to return at Falls City Public to be an elementary teacher for a second year. They let her out of it, which is great because that let us hire her. And so I really like what she brings to the table, a very competent, experienced teacher who's taught many years as middle school ELA and someone who has, high expectations, which is, something we all know we need in education is those high expectations. Of course, Mr. Jacobs will be our MTSS interventionist. He's shown that he's great with kids, and that's what you really need is someone who can just work with kids and help them along the way. And that's probably the most important skill for that position. So I think he's great for that. So that's kind of a rundown of those positions we addressed in tonight's meeting. On the bottom of the third page of my report is kind of an outline of all the positions that have been staffed so far. Again, all the way, all the new people coming in, just I feel really good from top to bottom about this list. Then the only other thing I kind of wanted to talk about tonight was our HVAC situation. I'm still waiting for specs from Greg. Can't put it out to bed until he gets that. Said he's been tied up with a big hospital job, and he knows our situation. He knows that I've been following up with him about once a week. I've been keeping Mark on those emails. Mark, do you have anything you want to share on any of that?
Not really, not until we
Okay.
get a little more quotes probably, so
Yeah.
we've, he did give us some specs, stuff on the gym that we discussed, and a couple different avenues, getting it quoted. Basically, quoting the gym with 4 units on top, being able to cool with the place completely full of people all the time, and then quoting it with just 2 units on it, and doing it maybe in steps, like to lower the cost initially, to have air conditioning in there for practice and stuff, and there's, to keep it cool, and then down the road leaving space to add 2 more units type of thing, just to space out the cost and stuff to make it more, which we'll get into a lot more when we get into the quotes, actually be able to bid it out and stuff, so, but yeah, he did the gym pretty much, but he hasn't done the school.
The VRF, yeah, that's what we really need.
Yeah.
And he had the blueprints already on the gym, so he was able, and so he's got to scan in the old blueprints for the high school and then draw it. It takes a little more time, and I think that's been the bottleneck there.
The other thing would have been just like the flushing of the system and stuff, the initial quote there for the bid was like 32,000, I think, and for that, they were basically going to flush out all the Freon out and get any kind of particles out, hoping to, fix the issue to bring everything back to make it last longer, but since we're replacing it anyway, there's no need to probably do that. We can limp by till.
That's the exact word, limp along.
Limp along until we actually get the replacement system in here and just save our money then. But that's why it was costing so much is, it wasn't just replacing a compressor or something, it was like a total flush of the system, which, is basically getting rid of all the Freon. You won't be able to save it because of, particles that could be in it and reuse it, so like basically charging it all, which is incredibly expensive. And then I hope that fixes it type of scenario, so.
I actually went back and since NOMA mill will eventually go away and found all the emails that had every invoice from 2017 till now and downloaded them all and put them in a folder just so there's a kind of an archive. of it.
Nice.
And it's like 30 invoices. It's just the amount from Train and then Ruts over the years, how many times we've had to have them come. And sometimes it's 1,000, sometimes it was closer to 15, 20,000 to do some of those repairs. I can tell you the bigger number, the farther down the road, the numbers are getting bigger and bigger.
Right.
So,
And I totally understand the flush, because if you have some kind of debris or particle in your system, it'll just ruin a compressor, which will take a whole system down, so a lot of times, like I said, you can keep Freon, and then reuse it and stuff, but if it is something like that, and it's a guess whether that's what's causing, the issue, that there's stuff in the lines, but it's kind of, you have to do one step at a time to try and fix it, but a full replacement is, obviously the way to go, and then it everything should be clean to start with, you know, and it's all fixed, so. But even if they did flush it and we spent 32,000, that may not be the ultimate fix either, so.
Well, that was gonna do 3 new compressors too, 3 new
Oh, the
compressors.
3, yeah.
And so we put 2 new compressors in last summer and one already went bad by December. So either Samsung just makes really bad compressors now, or it has something in there that damaged it, probably both. So
Yeah,
there,
I would guess there was something in there that, that's causing the issue. You know.
so when they gave us that biggest repair quote so far, it was with the mindset, okay, we gotta keep this system going a few more years. When that was coming into the January board meeting was when we voted to go ahead and go out for bid. And just a little bit of kind of how that process works. We've done it a few times before, but once the blueprints are ready to go, when we say blueprints and specs, they're the same thing. They mean one of them's got the actual drawing, and then there are pages that list out all the technical details that the bidders have to match all those details. And then
So you can make sure you're comparing apples to apples. So and everybody that quotes it, they quote the exact same thing. So same equipment, no corners cut or anything. So.
And we'll publish an invitation to bid. The only place it has to be published is your local paper circulation, which would be the Republican, but we'll probably put it in the World Herald as well. And then so what really gets you the exposure, it goes up on a bid house, which is just these places that house blueprints, and it sends out alerts to all of the potential contractors that this has been uploaded, and then they get that alert and they can go in and bid on it. And then you upload a copy of the invitation to bid, the specifications to bidders. It has a copy of the blueprints and specs with it, a blank contract, so it has all the language of the contract just with the information not filled in about the specifics. And then a bid sheet, the sheet that they'll actually print and fill out the bid and sign it and have it in a sealed envelope at such and such time. And lots of time, if it's a big enough project, they will, so if you do like a Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m., you want to do the bid opening, they'll come and be present for the bid opening. When we was looking at doing the gym last time, we had a couple bidders present for that bid opening. So we can't do that until we actually have the blueprints, because it all comes up as one total upload. Yeah. And so we want, that's what we're holding off on right now, is we need those specs. And so as soon as he gets them, the board has already approved it, as soon as he gets those to us, we'll go live with that.
And Greg's the only one that can do that.
Well, he's the one we approved to do it.
And he's done all the legwork. It would basically be starting over if we got somebody else. So I think he's probably pretty close to it, finishing up his other project. So within a week or two, probably, hopefully before next board meeting, we should be squared away.
And then when you post it, you generally want to allow about 6 weeks for the bidders to go. I mean, we take the advice of the engineer on that, but they like to give about 6 weeks, because that's about how much time the bidders need to gather the information. You don't want to scare people away with too short of a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And so 4 to 6 weeks.
So we might be doing the project when school first starts, could be an issue. That's what I'm thinking, you know what I mean, by the time it takes everything,
Especially by the
Could
time
be an
we get
issue.
equipment and everything else ordered and in and.
One advantage is we know we've got 2 people ready to bid, which is a leg up. You've got Grunwald and Rutz ready to bid. And so we just have to tell them, hey, here you go. Resubmit your number. They'll mark in their markup and they'll resubmit. I just want you to know, I'm just waiting. And
Yeah,
I'm trying to be as pet.
He's been very persistent. So it's not Brian at all, 100%. There was I'm pretty sure in the next couple of weeks it should be we should have it done.
Well, I reminded him what our circumstances are with the VRF too. Is like, remember, we've gotta make this old system keep working until the new one gets
About
put
to
in.
get warm too.
Yeah, because when AC goes down, we
Well, I
gotta
just
call.
would feel bad if we have to delay school and then that means school goes longer, you know what I mean, next year too for people, so. Maybe we can think of an
Well, there-
alternative if that.
There's ways we can get the system up, like, so we can get the old system working.
Right, but if we're gonna replace it, they're gonna be in there working on stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know what all that'll entail, but disruption of classroom time, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. Cause it's a big project.
I think if you're intentional, you can work around some of those things, in such a way that you wouldn't have to delay start of school. You might have to have rotating classrooms for a week or so and then move to another class, or maybe a few days, and just have to be a little flexible during that time.
I don't foresee it being something we would need to stop school for.
I mean, I don't know how many times Ruts have been here and had to work in classrooms, and we've just worked around it. You know, the scope of labor, time-wise, might almost be faster than having to tear out a cassette or pull the Freon and get up there and take out the part that keeps going bad in those things. And because that takes several hours of labor, and usually that work is being done when classes and sessions. So we've got a lot of experience being flexible with those sort of things.
And then when they do come, I mean, my experiences with Ruts, but when they do come, they do a lot of the after school hours too. They stay pretty late, maximize their trips, so they're not making more. They've been really flexible with us, always trying to avoid classrooms that have classes. So, just to put, as you're considering the million moving pieces in this, just something else to add to that.
And they can do the outside work during you kind of work around it too, to where the outside work can be done when kids are in class, and then maybe later in the day, they go to the inside work. That's it for me.
All right. Next on the informal reports are board committees. Do you have anything, Brian?
I don't know, I mean, do we have anything you want to add for foundation?
Communications committee, there's an item on here that we're going to approve for our Golden Readers, to approve some funds for that. We're currently working on Teacher of the Year Week, and briefly discussed before the meeting tonight, scholarship inventory and getting that ready once the students turn in their scholarships next Thursday, to get all those out and copied into the selection committee so we can get those all ready for graduation. So other than that, there's
Policy folks, do you have anything you want to chat about?
Meeting and discussing has been well.
sounds good. All right, KSP School Law Webinar Series 24-25, Rookie Refresher, Confidentiality, and Handling Complaints.
From KSB School Law, here to talk to you today about confidentiality in your role as a board member. First things first, just a couple disclaimers quick. Number one, KSB School Law only represents public schools and related entities. So in other words, we serve as legal counsel for your school district, operating at the pleasure of your school board. We don't provide individual advice to any other families or teachers or individual board members about their roles and functions. We advise the school board. And so it's in that light that I have to tell you, what we're gonna do is a quick tour today through the confidentiality laws and how they impact your role, or maybe are frustrating to you as a board member, but this isn't designed to answer any specific question. So kind of standard lawyer caveat, right? Things vary and the facts matter. But this hopefully will give you an understanding of what it is that is often frustrating to boards about confidentiality issues. So first and foremost, let's just start out. It's really a couple of main areas that we talk about most often. First are issues related to students, second are issues related to staff members. So when it comes to student confidentiality, what we're really talking about are two primary laws that impact the protected nature of information about the students that we serve. First, we have a state law in Nebraska that protects confidentiality of education records and the contents of those records. Second, we have a federal law known as FERPA. And FERPA is a law that says for any document or information that we have that personally identifies a student, that is maintained in that student's education files or records, that's protected by confidentiality. In other words, we can't, as the school or any school official, disclose that typically without consent of a parent. There are a couple of exceptions we're going to talk about today. Number one is the school official exception. Number two is the emergency exception. I'm going to tackle those in reverse order. The FERPA emergency exception says basically this: if school officials have a student record that would otherwise be confidential because it identifies the student and we maintain it, we can disclose that record if we're doing so to prevent damage or harm to the health and safety of either that student or of other individuals. For example, if there's a student with suicidal ideations, we can disclose their education records or the information we have as the school to their healthcare providers or to emergency responding personnel if we have a situation that comes up. If there's a threat of violence at your school, we can probably share with law enforcement information that would be pertinent to them to understand, to help us address what could otherwise turn into a pretty serious health or safety situation. The second exception, the school official exception, is the one that's used most often. What this says is, even if we assume that a record is otherwise a confidential education record of a student, that can be shared with other school officials that have, and I quote, a legitimate educational interest or a need-to-know basis for that information that helps them carry out some sort of professional responsibility that they have. So sharing a copy of a student record with that student's teacher, probably acceptable. That is a student, right? That we have confidential information that we're maintaining. We're sharing it with that teacher because that teacher may need to know what's in that student's education plan. For example, they're a school official with a need-to-know basis to help them carry out their duties. Board members, unfortunately, have limited roles when it comes to the things that you're expected to do for an individual student situation. One that comes up most often, student discipline. To the extent that you have a student discipline situation, the Nebraska Student Discipline Act is very clear. The primary responsibility for starting that process rests with your building principals. There's some oversight from the superintendent throughout that process, but the board's role is an appeal body if that student and that family don't like the result that they've gotten through the administrative process. So when it comes to sharing information with board members about student discipline issues, we typically can't do it because your role is defined. And so even if we want to share that information with you, we typically can't, to protect your ability as the board to serve your statutory function, which is more of an appellate body through any specific student discipline issue. Another one that comes up quite often, and just as an example that we get all the time, is we have a student who's engaging in violent actions at school. They're hurting their classmates or their teachers, or they're ruining school property. Why are we continuing to serve that student in that location? Chances are that is a student that may be on an education plan defined by federal law. And the role that a board has in development or carrying out of those plans is basically nothing. The laws are very clear that there are specific teams, generally consisting of that student and students' parents and our staff members, that are tasked with coming up with those education plans and modifying them and dealing with changes in that student that, which might require changes in those education plans. If you look in these laws, there's no role for a school board. So to the extent that the school board does things like set policies, and you're wondering why it is that we're not disciplining that student, there's a really good chance that it is because it's a student that is being served on an education plan because it's a student with a disability, and our general policies have to give way to the needs of that student. And so if a board member gets a call from a parent or a patron wondering why their kid has to sit in the classroom with a student who's tearing the classroom apart, and you genuinely are interested in wanting to know why that could possibly be, the reason that you're not being told is probably because somebody like me is saying to your administrators, we would have to define a function of the school board in any of that process before we could share that information. So you don't just get that information because you serve on the board. You only get that information when you're carrying out some sort of function related to the rights and obligations we have toward that student. So it's frustrating, absolutely, but that's a really kind of the gist of why board members don't get shared. Not much information gets shared with board members. Now, as it relates to staff members, I think of it very similarly. We have a law in Nebraska that says if you're a teacher, administrator, employee of the school, whatever's in your personnel file, with the contents of that file, or any of the records in that file, we can't share that with any individual without permission of that employee. And similar to the student confidentiality laws we talked about, the exception applies if we are sharing information from a personnel file that is necessary for somebody to help carry out one of their official functions. When it comes to school board members, you're often not involved in the decision of, for example, how a teacher is evaluated, whether they've engaged in misconduct that requires them to be reprimanded, whether they need an improvement plan to help them improve their classroom management and instructional performance. That's all basically tasked to your administration. So while you may be curious, while you may want to know, and I completely understand why, I'm gonna be telling your school administrators, we can't share that personnel file information with board members because those board members would not be carrying out any specific function in looking at it. Now, certainly there are exceptions. There are times when the school board is brought up to speed on something that's happening with an employee. But the general rule is, as a board member, you're not given access to those files because we can't point to a role that you're carrying out yet. When the situation gets to the point where we may be giving that teacher, for example, notice that their contract is not going to be renewed, or that we're canceling their contract because they engaged in serious unprofessional behavior, the board's role is well defined. You sit as the board, as functionally the judge and jury, in deciding whether that administrator's recommendation that this person have their contract canceled, be fired from employment, that decision rests with the school board. The school board approves contracts when certificated staff members are hired. Similarly, the school board is the one that ultimately decides if that contract is going to continue or if it's not going to continue because they've engaged in some sort of misconduct, or there's some reason that your administration is presenting to you that that person should no longer be employed. So to the extent that you are sitting as a board member in a personnel hearing, we have to make sure that you're able to give that teacher a fair hearing. You have to have an appearance of impartiality such that any information that you may have received beforehand isn't going to bias you, isn't going to impact your ability to sit in judgment and make sure that you can give that person a fair hearing and make your decision based only on what you have presented to you at the hearing. So between the confidentiality statute and our need as school administrators and school attorneys to keep you from any sort of argument that you're biased, it's pretty limited in what we can share with the school board up to the point that you will be fulfilling your statutory role and sitting as judge and jury in a school board hearing on that person's continued employment. So frustrating, absolutely. I wish it didn't function that way, but it does function that way. And hopefully this quick tour through those confidentiality statutes lets you know why so often you feel like you're in the dark. And although I understand completely why it is that board members want to know a lot of this information, we simply can't share it with you in a lot of cases. And that's because of the confidentiality rights that we owe to our students and to their parents and to our staff members. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
One thing I would follow up on that is there, having sat in some of these situations in Kansas, because that's where I came from originally, it's particularly with personnel, it's very different in Kansas. So it's not uncommon, for example, in a school board meeting in Kansas to go into closed session, go in and pull a teacher's evaluation, pull their personnel file, and start handing those materials out to the board members to review. And for the board members to get feedback as to how to handle. I can see the value of that. I can see, neither here, the bottom line is the laws in Nebraska are set up such that it's not very conducive to keeping board members in the know about things. And it's kind of frustrating sometimes. But I tell you that, and I've shared that with Mr. Evans as well. It's like, things are a lot different in Nebraska. Just get ready for it. It's really hard to communicate with your board members about things that are going on. And so that, like it was for me, well, for me it was when I first got on the school board back in 2013. It's like, why don't we get to know anything? It's like, well, that's the way the laws are written in Nebraska. That'll be a change for him as well, and probably a learning curve. So, and then the next one, is it liability? No. The next,
Confidentiality.
no clients.
Handling
Interesting.
complaints.
Handling complaints. Sorry, I was.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Hussey. I'm one of the attorneys at KSB School Law, and this is the next video in the series that we have put together to assist board members in knowing a little bit of legal background about their obligations and their authority as school board members. Today's topic is board member authority and handling complaints, which are probably two of the most common questions I get asked by new board members when we get a chance to see you guys in person when we're at conferences, either in Kearney or Omaha or wherever. So I want to start out, I hate that we have to do this, but by reminding everybody that KSB School Law represents school districts and educational service units. We don't represent any individuals. If you as a board member have an individual question that as it relates to your duties as a school board member, we are happy to help you out as part of our service to the school district, but we don't represent individual board members, just like we don't represent individual administrators or teachers. Technically, these slides are educational and not legal advice. Although I do think the information we'll talk about today will be super useful to you in getting educated on your authority to deal with patron complaints and other things as an individual board member. Technically, this does not create a legal client-attorney relationship, and nothing is confidential because other people are going to watch this video. So lawyers ruin everything and got that out of the way. So today's topic is really two interrelated things. And the first thing I want to talk about is your role and responsibilities as an individual board member. I think this cartoon is hilarious, and I also think this cartoon really sort of encapsulates what I want you to understand from this next section of the slides. Because you have a responsibility to your community, and that's why you ran for the board, because you care about your local school district and about the education that kids are receiving. And yet, once you get on the board, your natural instincts for like what would make common sense for things that you can do as a board member are really sometimes inconsistent with what the law would require you to do. So here's a list of your authority outside a meeting as an individual board member. And basically outside of a meeting, there is a Nebraska Supreme Court case that's directly on point that says school board members don't have any authority to speak on behalf of the school board outside of a meeting. We had a situation a few years ago where a school board member had like called the local contractor, told the guy to go ahead and start building the press box on the football field. The local contractor had actually bought the equipment or the supplies and materials to start building the press box. And when the rest of the board found out about it, they were like, whoa, we never said that you could do that. That individual board member did not have the authority to bind the board. As an individual, you don't have any authority to say the board is gonna do X or Y or Z, or that people should do anything based on your word as a board member. There's another Nebraska Supreme Court case that says board members are obligated to act on behalf of the school district, even when they're acting as individuals. So even though this board member couldn't have bound the guy to build the press box, he also would have violated his board duties if he would have gone around town and said, hey, we're gonna be building a press box soon, so everybody make sure you increase the cost of your equipment and your materials so that you can clip the board for the maximum amount of money possible, right? So you cannot bind the board or speak on the board's behalf, but you're also not supposed to do things that make things more difficult for the school district. And you may be subjected to personal liability if you violate one of those two rules. So this board member that had told the contractor to build the press box, the legal fight was whether or not the board member had to pay out of his pocket for the supplies that the contractor had bought based on the board member's representation to the contractor that it was okay to build the press box. So you want to be super careful when you're not in a board meeting and you're out in the community that you don't ever say anything that a community member could take as, oh, Karen said the board was going to blah, 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 so I'm going to do this other thing. Because not only does that not bind the school district, it potentially could subject you to personal liability. Now, there's some real specific exceptions to individuals who can do things outside of a board meeting, and they're the kinds of exceptions that you would expect. The board president has the authority to build the agenda in consultation with the superintendent. Board president can also sign legal documents that must be signed, like in litigation, outside of a board meeting. The secretary of the board can take a census and approve the treasurer's bond. The treasurer can apply for a bond and apply for disbursement of funds to the school district. And if you've been specifically designated by the board to negotiate on the board's behalf, you can do negotiations outside the board. These exceptions, I think, are really illuminating because they're so limited, which tells you that if they had to actually put into the state statute that the board president can create an agenda outside the board meeting. That means nobody has a lot of authority outside the board meeting, if you see what I'm saying. If they had to put these into the statute to say these officers have these specific abilities to do these things outside of a meeting, that means nobody has much authority to do much outside a meeting, outside of these. So, now, what you're probably saying to me is, hold on a second, Karen, are you telling me that, number one, I don't get to tell anybody, I don't get to speak as a board member to anybody outside of board meetings? Yes, that's what I'm telling you. And two, in fact, I have fewer rights because I can't do anything contrary to the district's interests? Yes. As a board member, outside board meetings, you have no power and you have fewer individual rights. But you know, all the money that you're making as a board member is gonna more than make up for the hassle of this gig, right? Now, I do wanna make clear, individual board members still have First Amendment rights to speak about matters that they find to be important politically or matters of religious faith, that sort of thing. And I certainly don't wanna give you the impression that you're not allowed to have an opinion on, you know, all of the controversial issues of the day, school prayer, gay, lesbian, trans rights. Like, you can have an individual opinion about those things. And the First Amendment says you can even share your opinion as an individual. What I do want you to be cautious of is, as a board member, if you go around town and tell everybody that you think school prayer needs to be in school and that it's ridiculous that the Supreme Court hasn't allowed schools to, you know, pray over the loudspeaker, the more you say that, the less likely it is that you're going to be able to vote on an issue related to school prayer when it actually comes up in front of the board. So I'm not saying you don't have the right to express your political opinions. You absolutely do, and you absolutely should, as your conscience dictates. The problem is, if you really care about making decisions about that hot button issue for the board, probably the less you say publicly, the better, because that keeps you with the maximum ability to take action when the time comes. Which is just, again, that's when I say that there's no common sense involved in how the law governs what school board members can and can't vote on. Okay, so you're saying to me, at this point in your head, you're like, okay, Karen, this makes no sense. Because if I can't do anything as an individual board member, what did these people vote for me to do, right? What do I do when someone comes up to me on the street and tells me something serious is wrong at the school? Or what do I do when I'm at church and somebody tells me that, you know, a teacher has really been abusing their kid and I want to take action to make sure that our kids are safe? That's the next section that I want to talk about. How do you deal with patron complaints if, as an individual board member, you don't have any authority to take action? And I am going to give you a step-by-step process that I promise you actually works for board members, even though it's super frustrating when you first start having to follow this process. So, step one, go find your board policy on patron complaints. If you are a KSB School Law Policy Service subscriber, that's gonna be your policy number 2006. The rest of you, I guarantee that you have a policy somewhere dealing with patron or community complaints. Now, one thing, this is gonna be different than your grievance policy. Your grievance policy deals with employees complaining about the working conditions that they're dealing with. That's usually gonna be found in your negotiated agreement. Some school districts have a policy on grievances as well as a policy on complaints. But what we're talking about here, when we've got a pissed off parent, a ticked off student, just a taxpayer that doesn't like that, you know, you're reading To Kill a Mockingbird in your school, whatever it is that they're complaining about, you're gonna wanna find the complaint policy, because that's gonna be the policy that's going to help you get this person the answer that they are looking for, which is to feel like they've been heard, right? So step one, go find that policy, wherever it is. Step two, and I mean this in all sincerity, I'm not joking, print 50 copies. I want you to have a stack of those in your car so that when someone comes up to you and has issues, you can actually do something for the person who's complaining to you, right? If you are like active in your church Sunday school and people are always wanting to talk about school at church, I would fold up a bunch of these and put them in the back of my Bible, and when people come up to me, I'd be like, here you go, right? So step three, when people buttonhole you at a ball game or at the grocery store or whatever, and they want to complain about the fact that their kid didn't make National Honor Society, or they think, you know, the math teacher is not good at her job, I want you to hand them this complaint policy. Now, that does two things. number one, it keeps you from getting sucked into that conversation. But number two, you are actually doing something useful for the person that has the complaint because you're showing them what has to happen next, right? And then step 4, as boards, you should follow that complaint procedure, whatever your policy says, follow it to the letter, okay? So as an example, these are screenshots from the KSB policy 2006. If you're not a policy service subscriber, your policy is gonna say something similar. So what we say is the first step of any complaint is for the person who has the concerns to speak directly to the person that they have a problem with. Now, sometimes people will say, I don't wanna talk to the teacher because she'll take it out on my kid. I don't wanna talk to the principal because I don't want anybody to know that I'm the one complaining. And your answer to that is 2 things. Number 1, there's really not much the school can do if you are unwilling to talk to the person that you've got the concerns with. But number 2, you can hide behind the policy. Well, I'm sorry, that's what our policy requires. And as an individual board member, I have to follow this policy, okay? Also notice the last sentence here. If the person says, I genuinely am afraid that the teacher will take it out on my kid, you can say, well, under step 1, you're allowed to skip that step and go to the building principal or the person, 1 step up the chain of command and start the process there. But notice that the answer is not for them to go tattletale to an individual board member. It's for the person with the concern to somehow work internally within the school district's chain of command. Second step, if they're unhappy with what the teacher or the coach or whoever says, they can go up to the next level. So the building principal, the Title IX coordinator, the superintendent, whoever is next up in the chain of command, if they don't like the answer to the first time they talk to the person they have a complaint with, then they can go 1 step up, okay? Then, if they're not happy with that level, they can go up to the superintendent. So let's say it's a classroom teacher, talk to the teacher, not happy, talk to the principal, not happy, then they can talk to the superintendent, okay? And then the final step is that the person can appeal to the Board of Education. So this policy is not really designed to keep people who have concerns from ever getting those concerns in front of the board, but it is designed to go through the administrative process so that you guys aren't hassling with like too much 4th grade math homework. I don't think the grade on my kid's social studies test was fair. Those are the kind of things that you don't get paid enough. You don't get paid enough to deal with any of this. But those are the things that you have an administrative team in place to deal with those levels of complaint. And it's not until you've had a chance for those administrators to work it out, then if they're still not satisfied, then it can go up to the board. Notice that the board's decision in these situations is final. So we don't have any step that they can go beyond the board. So we want to make sure that they've had all the intermediate steps before they get to the board, because the board is done, right? Once the board has decided this issue, the complaint is sort of dead and the whole process is finished. These next 2 slides are what the appeal process to the board looks like. That doesn't necessarily mean a school board meeting where there's people there to yell at the board. Most of the time when we have these complaints, we have them submit their concerns in writing, and the board just looks at the paper so that we don't have all the drama. And then the board makes a decision, sometimes in closed session if it deals with a staff member or a student, and then the board issues that final determination in writing. So if people have concerns about employees, I would direct those to the superintendent. The superintendent is the person that you guys hold accountable for personnel decisions. I would tell everyone that approaches you with complaints to follow the complaint procedure. This is really the best way for the district to handle these issues. Be careful, sometimes board members get trapped because you just wanna be polite and, not make somebody that you've known probably for 20 years mad. So sometimes I have board members say sort of generic things like, well, I'll ask some questions or I'll look into it. Be careful not to do that, because you don't want this patron to think that you're going to solve this problem for them, right? The way you help the patron solve the problem is by giving them the complaint policy and telling them to follow up that chain of command. Now, I've had a few districts say, Karen, you told us to give people the complaint policy, and sure enough, they filed a complaint, and then they went all through the chain of command, and then they complained to the board. I think that's perfect, right? I don't think that's a flaw of the system. I think that means that the system is working well. Because if the board really believes that the math homework is too much in the 4th grade, and if the administrators in between have not made a decision that you agree with, now the patrons had a chance to work all through the steps, And the district is best served, now it's ready for the board to give the administration the thumbs up or the thumbs down on how they think they handle that. So I don't think it's terrible if we have complaints go to the board. That's kind of what the process is designed to do, to weed things out and have only the most important things go up to the board. But I don't think it's a failure of the system if the board ultimately does have to handle some of these complaints. Because again, that's what the patrons have basically elected you to do, to take those large overarching issues and to handle them. So, in summary, as an individual board member, you have extra responsibilities when you're not in a board meeting, and absolutely no extra rights when you're not in a board meeting, and I'm sorry about that. But I think that the problem of dealing with people that come up to you at the grocery store or, on the street and want to talk to you about a school district issue is to really drive that patron to your complaint policy and to have that policy at your fingertips so that you can be useful as a board member and tell that person what the next steps are that they need to take. I hope this is helpful. This is this KSB at ksbschoollaw.com is the email address that we have for the entire firm. So if you have questions or issues and you send an email to this address, it'll go to the whole firm. Remember that since we only represent school districts, we can't give individual board members advice, but we are happy to help you out with questions that you as a board have about this content. Or you can call that office number and one of the attorneys can talk to you. I hope this was helpful, and we will see you for the next board video in about 30 days. Bye. Hello, everyone.
Any questions about any of that stuff? If I don't know the answer, I'll be glad to look into it. On the complaint procedure, one thing too that was probably happened since this was recorded with policy 2006, with changes to Title IX that happened this last, whatever the last time they happened, recently and often it seems like, but there used to be a separate complaint process under federal law that Title IX had to follow, but now it's all one complaint process. So policy 2006 handles all complaints, complaints about staff, students, and also anything that deals with harassment under or discrimination under Title IX policy, as well as I think the other federal titles, so other types of discrimination identified under federal guidelines. So.
All right, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to policy. Consider accepting the policy committee's recommendations for policy reviews and updates as presented. 1, for review only, 5022, investigations, arrests, and other student contact by law enforcement and Health and Human Services. 5023, student illness. 5024, medication of students. 5028, initiation and hazing, sorry. And 5030, dating violence. And then number 2, for review and revision, 5025, student insurance. We can break those up if you want to. Whoever wants to make the motion can make the decision.
I'll make the motion to approve for review 5022, 5023, 5024, 5028, 5030, and for review and revision 5025.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion by Hope and a second by Julia. Hope, do you have any discussion?
I do not.
Julia? Would the rest of the board have any other discussion regarding the policies? All right, we'll go ahead and we'll vote. Bobby?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jason, yes. Hannah?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. Consider approving the Education Foundation's expenditures of expenditures of $378 for the purchase of Golden Readers t-shirts. And then, yeah, we'll split these up. But I'll make the motion to approve the Education Foundation's expenditures of $378 for the purchase of Golden Readers t-shirts.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jason, second by Hope. I don't have any discussion. Hope,
I do not either.
anybody else? Okay, going ahead and voting. Hope,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Mark?
Yep.
Jason, yes. Hannah?
Yes.
And Bobby?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. Consider approving the agreements between Pawnee City Public Schools and Educational Service Unit Number 4 as presented. 2025-2026 Core Service Agreement, 2025-2026 Special Education Service Contract, and Behavioral Programming Memorandum of Understanding.
Do you want me to talk about these at all?
We can? You want?
So, the core service agreement, it fulfills the obligations of the service unit under Rule 84. And these are what I would call the free stuff that we get from the service unit. And this is great, to have these opportunities. So this is like, we talk about Dr. Gossman and Jen Medicine coming in a lot to do, it's when they come in and do that stuff. It's when, they give us sometimes there's contracted services, so Dustin might provide some free services, but Dustin, we may have to contract with him to do some stuff that Jeff can't figure out. But by and large, this is stuff that doesn't have any direct cost to the district. They get a little state aid. They also have a taxing authority, and you'll see a penny or two on the tax every year. And this is and that's how they fund it. So it's a great service for districts. I think under rule or under law, we have to approve it every year, and that's why it's on here. The second one, the special education service contract. So this kind of outlines anticipated sped needs for the following year, and it's this sheet that kind of outlines and this isn't these aren't exact numbers, these are estimates. The rates are exact, I believe. So when you have these rates, how that works is ISU doesn't just get to willy-nilly set their own rates. The rates need to be revenue neutral. I mean, they're not supposed to lose money, they're not supposed to gain money. And so if they, and then all that money goes into a fund that has to pay for SPED-related services. Those rates are approved by the Nebraska Department of Education. And so if they want to charge X amount of dollars per hour for a service, that has to be approved by Nebraska Department of Education. It's either a flat rate or they have to explain why those costs are what they are. And they have to give a breakdown of budget cost and divided by anticipated hours of service. And over the years, we've actually taken over, and that's kind of the trend. It used to be that a district could contract for school site services, for example, cheaper than they could hire their own school site. But as that number continued to creep north of 100,000, that's when we started to have the conversation is why don't we just hire a full-time school site rather than pay 130,000 to the service unit for those services for someone who comes 6 hours, 2 days a week, when we can have a full-time person on payroll to do actual other things besides testing and pay less money. So that's the route we've gone there. Another one that we've saved a little money on was speech. Recall a year ago at this meeting, we decided to contract directly with Maria Hippen for speech services, so her hours haven't changed. In fact, they've gone up a little. It just because we contracted directly with her, her rate is lower, and we didn't. The service unit was, I think, billing us 100. And that wasn't anything they were doing wrong. They were just following the guidance of the Department of Ed. They were billing $135 an hour or something like that, and they were paying her $82 an hour. And the markup went into their fund, and so we contract with her directly. At one time then, this number was closer to 350, 400,000 at the bottom. We currently don't have any kids in the life skills program. Behavior program, I'll talk about next. The behavior program is still, the old BFIT program has gone away, and the new behavior program is still in the exploratory stages. And so really the only things we're kind of left with is SPED director, audiologist, and our behavior support. And those are things we really can't do in-house, but we need under SPED law to have those services, and that's what those are for.
What does the behavior support include?
So they have a behavior interventionist who comes and helps us they give us data, they give us suggestions, they participate in meetings. It would be,
Like IEP meetings and
yeah,
stuff like
well,
that.
it's Cassie, is the one who's providing that support right now, but I think Cassie's leaving, so I don't know if they have a new one hired or not, but these are,
Sure.
um,
200 hours probably doesn't end up being a lot of time.
no, but,
considering, you know.
and
I was just curious what that means.
well, and when we come up with these numbers, they ask me for the estimate, what they anticipate the numbers, and they show us how many hours they've used. That comes like in February, and they show how many hours have been used so far year to date. So we try to make a good guesstimate that matches what we've used the prior year on a kind of a projected basis, where we're gonna end the school year. So currently, and then of course, early childhood, so any of the 0 to age 3 stuff that happens in the household, they've got a couple ladies that go in, so through the Child Find, the hospitals, our pediatricians are really good at our hospitals about if they see a kid that has a speech delay, or maybe a vision issue, or a hearing thing. I know Dr. Nist does this a lot, you'll see his referrals, and they've got a form they fill out, and that goes to the issue for, and the SPED director does that, and then they make a referral. We also have a Child Find obligation. If we hear of those things, we actually just did it this last week. We heard of a student that had some delays, and so we called the parents and said, hey, we heard about this. We've got a Child Find obligation to make sure your child gets some services. And so we, between the doctors and us, and we do that sort of thing a lot. They're responsible for going into the household and providing the services. So that's the total, 102,000 is the projected there, and the agreement just continues to provide those services moving forward. The third one I wanted to talk a little bit about because it's new. It's old, but it's new. Years ago, when I first started here, the BFIT program, as it was referred to, was only a year or two old. And it was when a bunch of superintendents say, hey, we need some place to go with kids that need behavior support, because we can't give them the supports they need in school. And quite honest, they're too disruptive for us to teach anyone when they're in our building. And they came up with a plan. The plan was basically they would take their total cost, and then they would build a school on a basis, a per pupil basis of what cost was. The problem with that model is those students in our issue 4 districts that tend to be those higher need students that have high behavioral needs also tend to be the students that have high transiency rates. You know, they'll come and go. And so one time they may have 10 kids in their program, next day, or 20 kids in the program, next day they may have only had 5. Well, it's hard to, when you have X amount of certified staff and X amount of paras and administration running these programs, it's hard to have dependable revenue to pay for those people when there's such an up and down fluctuation. So I think at one time we were paying as little as 15 to 20,000 per head. And at one time, back in, we were paying upwards of over 60,000 a head for those kids. I remember we filled a van with 5 elementary age kids and brought them over at one time, because all of them, it was all through IEP team decisions. These are not administrative decisions. So it's not a situation where we have a kid, it's not discipline. So it's not a situation where we have a kid that has behavior challenges and the principal says, we gotta get him out of here, you're going to BFIT. You're gonna go to the BFIT program, and that's your punishment for your misbehavior. That goes against the model, and it wouldn't be supported. What you do then is you go through, that child almost always has an IEP, because usually they have a disability associated with their maladaptive behavior. And then the IEP team generally consisted at the bare minimum, a classroom teacher, a special education teacher, an administrator, and a parent. And they meet, and you can bring in an audiologist, you can bring school psychologists, you can bring in the behavior interventionist into these meetings, and they make placement decisions. Special education has something known as least restrictive environment, which means the goal is always to get the child back to the least restrictive environment, which is the general ed classroom. So we want, if the child has behavior problems, we want to use operant conditioning to fix those behavior problems and bring the child back to the classroom. That's the goal. The problem is, we don't have the personnel with the training and the expertise to do that in-house. That's very expensive to have those people, and as you might imagine, when you're dealing with kids that are extreme behavior challenges, it lends itself to a lot of turnover. To really get the people that have the, the mental toughness to do that sort of thing, it really takes years of college training to get them to a point where they have the thick enough skin and know how to respond. People like Cassie, the behavior. So she's dealt with these on a first-hand basis, and she also provides advice. So then the data needs to drive the whole process to remove emotions from the equation. So you need to have some sort of data point that makes a decision whether the child gets a tier 2 intervention, a tier 3 intervention would be moving them off-site or moving them out of the classroom and creating a behavior program for them. The goal is then part of that is to remove them from the setting so that it doesn't interfere with the other kids' learning and keeps the other children safe. But part of it also is to give that child what they need. And what they need may not be math on day one. What they need on day one may be learning how to accept yes and no. Learning how the basic things that most kids know, that when you come into a classroom, you're supposed to stay in your chair. Some kids need a lot of reconditioning on that just to know. And until you get that down, math and reading may be a secondary concern, may take a back seat. And that's so hard for me as a traditional classroom teacher, for traditional classroom teachers, for paras that have middle class values. That's very hard for us to wrap our heads around and easy to forget that when you have those sort of things. So we know we have these challenges in our community. We know that this was a big there was a big exclamation point put on this for the strategic planning process, is why aren't we dealing with these behavior problems? Well, one of the answers is we don't have anywhere to go with them. You'll look on claims from tonight. We have a claim to Bernaculi. Is that how they pronounce it?
Bernaclau.
How is it?
Bernaclau.
Bernaclau, you've heard of the BEST program? The B, it's an acronym. Yeah, so that's 1 quarter, $12,682. They will not take anyone below grade 6. So I've called Boys Town, I've called Behaven, I've called either I or the sped director has called Auburn, Beatrice. I've called ESU 5. They have one of these pay-to-play type programs. Their positions are all spoken for. There is nowhere to go with these kids if they're below age or grade 6, which leaves you one option really, or 2 options. Leave them in the classroom, which is not popular and not effective for the child or the other students, or 2, build a program around it with people that are underqualified to provide that programming. And that's what we've had to do several times here in the last few years since the BFIT program went away, is we have a couple coaches' rooms that have been turned into behavior rooms. We have one that's a sensory room, one that's a learning room. Those rooms, even though they've got 4 concrete walls and a basic desk, have been tore apart multiple times, multiple restraints using the CPI restraints, Crisis Prevention Institute restraint. I've had to do multiple restraints on these children. I don't think you want your superintendent wasting all this time babysitting the kid that needs 3 full-time paid adults, but that's what has happened many times over the years. And I guess since I've lived this firsthand, I'm pretty passionate about this. We need a solution. Not because we just need a place for these kids to go to get them out of our hair. Maybe that's true in an immediate sense. But long term, these kids need something we can't give them. And they need the programming. So you can get those specialists together because it is cheaper by the dozen. It's still expensive, but it's cheaper by the dozen. And bringing them off-site to a position will allow you to do that. Problem is, for issue 4 to be able to do that, they need two things. They need you to commit to a year of payment for them to make the renovations and get the staff hired that they need to run the program. And two, they need a minimum of 5 districts to buy in. So far, JCC is the only one who said yes. I checked with Greg today just to find out if anyone else had. He said no, and I'm gonna remind everyone at the advisory meeting on Thursday that they need to. I said, well, it's on our board agenda tonight, I'll have an answer tomorrow. And so, what it would amount to is you would commit to paying $30,000 in year 1. That would guarantee you a spot in the future. Potentially you could, I would think, purchase multiple spots. But you're gonna pay whatever the flat rate is in year 2 and moving forward, probably in that 20 to 30,000 range. You're gonna pay that times the number of positions you hold. You're also gonna pay that whether you put a child in that position or not. I asked the question, Todd Evans asked me that question when I was explaining it to him, and so I asked the issue 4 is, can we rent our position out if we don't have a kid in there? So if we don't have a kid in there, and let's say Lewiston wants to use it, can we lease it to Lewiston? I don't see why not, as long, so we would pay issue for it, and then they would reimburse us for it. Something else that's notable here, this is a qualified SPED expense. So our SPED expenses that we use local funds for, local taxpayer dollars or state aid dollars to pay for, minus a few exceptions which are small, get reimbursed at 80% currently. It used to be as low as 42%, but that was a big push of Governor Pillen. He wanted to get property tax rates down, and he recognized one way of doing that is reimburse special education at the rate it was used to be paid at, which is 80%. So that was a huge amount of money that the Department of Education put into the Education Future Fund to fund that. But currently, last year and the year before, and so far for next year, our SPED expenses are getting reimbursed at 80%. So this would be 23,000 of that 30,000 would get reimbursed to the district in the subsequent year through SPED reimbursement. And it used to be that didn't matter because we were equalized and we'd lose it as a resource on the TIOSA formula. We're not equalized anymore. So now every additional penny we can get, whether it's option aid, whether it's SPED reimbursement, is more money we have to keep our property tax request down. So it is a dollar for dollar, or an 88 cents on the dollar reimbursement for our cost. To me, it's a no-brainer. You're probably gonna save money in the long run, but it seemed like a big enough dollar amount. Because if little Billy walks in to the school tomorrow, parents move into the district and he's got some major behavior challenges, and we've got a contract with Behavior, Boys Town, and pay $100,000 a year, and that's what the IEP team decides, you as board members don't have a choice. You have to pay it. You just heard Karen say that, you don't have a choice. We've gotta pay that money. Wouldn't it be nice to have a spot waiting for us at Auburn that we've already paid for that was only 15 or 20,000 versus trying to scramble to find a place to provide services for a kid that we can't provide here in-house, and not have to come up with $100,000 that wasn't built into the budget and a driver, which is always hard, and a vehicle. You know, we've got one vehicle dedicated to SPED transportation that can't do anything else. And if we go in different directions, that's 2 drivers and 2 vehicles that we have tied up. So, to me, it's a no-brainer, but I think it needs, and I've got it, I don't have the budget hard and fast, but I've got a loose budget for the most part built for next year. And I feel like, or I've already got those numbers budgeted in, so it's.
So we're in it for 5 years once we sign it,
Correct.
right, according to this?
Yep.
How many kids would we have, like, say it opens in the fall, how many kids potentially?
It won't open to the fall.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, with our student body right now, if it were to open in the fall, do we have
We have
kids
2
now that
students
would-
right now that would be in it.
2 of them.
If maybe we've gotten to a point with one of them that we wouldn't need to go there, the other one probably would go there or would be there at some point.
Okay.
Because that's where the data is important. I didn't finish that thought. Thank you for bringing that up. So the data will decide when they make it in and when they make it out. And it's gotta kind of be a fluid transition, so if they earn their way out, they get out, and then they've gotta earn their way back in. And they've gotta be able to demonstrate that they have made their way back into the least restrictive environment.
Historically, over the last 5 years, per year, have we had somebody qualify that would be in it each year?
I would say we've had more like 4 or 5 every year between K-12.
And it's done here, or they go
It's an Auburn.
Auburn, okay, so not
And
too
this is
far.
for K through 12?
Closer to
Or
anything else we
just,
have. It would be K-12.
would be K-12?
Now, I don't like to make, we might not mess up a current arrangement, but that might not be a factor anyway because of the age of the child involved. But I anticipate, if history is any indication, we'll have it filled more often than we'll have it vacant.
So say we have 2 kids that potentially could be in it, but like the number of kids we could potentially use doesn't depict how much our starting, like to sign the contract at 30,000 is a set 30,000, no matter what,
Correct,
and no matter how many kids we potentially might have qualified, correct?
correct. That's the pay-to-play model. We're paying for it year 1 for the startup cost, and then the next 4 years will be to keep the child going there. Presumably, we could hold 2 or 3 spots.
And at that time, then it would be, what, 15 to 20,000 per kid?
It's gotta be, let's keep the number at 30,000 just to be safe. Because I don't want to set a false expectation for you, because after year 1, and you've read it better than me, but after year 1, I think those numbers would fluctuate.
Depending on their needs.
Depending upon, because cash in and
Right.
expense have to, they're not in it to make money, they're not in it to lose money, the service unit.
Regardless,
But it would, if we had more than 1 student over there, whatever the set price would be for that year, we would have it times 2, or however.
Exactly.
So it's per student,
So if we
or
got,
per spot that we wanted.
and it might be a moot point, because if 3 other districts don't sign up, it's not gonna move forward.
if, it's all, refundable though, the 80%, so even if we have 4 students in there, it's 80% of it's coming back.
Correct, as long as the reimbursement rate stays at 80%. Now, it very likely could drop down, because, not surprisingly, sped rates go up much faster than the consumer price index. So as the state gets short on money, they stop reimbursing, but, what is that? That's, 24,000 reimbursement of that 30. So really, it's only costing the district 6,000. You just gotta front the 30.
Sure.
But it might change depending.
Right. Reimbursement rates have been as low as 42%.
When you said that if we aren't using it, we could lease it, what happens if we are leasing it? And then.
That would be the terms of the lease agreement you
Okay,
create
that
with
we have-
the district at
we
the
have
time you
somebody
decide
that
to
comes
lease
in
it
and
out.
we need that spot, I mean, what does that do to but it would be part of
So,
that.
so I learned of this just a couple years, so issue 5 does. Somehow or another, Lewiston was able to weasel their way in to issue 5 and get a spot held. And so I called Brenda and asked her, or emailed her, I can't remember, and said, can we buy one too, please? And she said, sorry, we're full. And that was that.
So reimbursement on a lease, like maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but how would that work then? Like, would we still get reimbursed, but we're not using
We're not in
that
the business
because-
usually of making sped money, we're usually in the business of spending it, so I don't know. We're actually we're researching that same question for a different reason that I don't want to say yet, because it may not happen, so it's still, but we're researching that question for a different reason, like if we get reimbursed, I think, so maintenance of it, you want a technical maintenance of effort basically says that you qualify, you've spent enough money in one of 4 areas. And it's a spreadsheet, and you put all the, you can tell I get excited about spreadsheets, I'm a real nerd. But you put all your expenses in, and your revenue in, and you've got to outspend yourself from the prior year in one of 4 categories. And it's state, it's local dollars spent per total, expenses minus revenue, right? So it would be that, and it would be local and state aid combined per pupil local, that's per pupil, meaning kids with IEPs on your caseload, and per pupil combination of local property tax and state aid, I think are the 4 categories. So in that regard, it would be an expense and a receipt that would work into the formula. Now, how does that work on reimbursement? I don't know. I don't think you can knowingly make money.
Right.
So I think it would be a wash. I'm guessing that then, I do know that, I'm just thinking through the steps. There's so many steps in the process. So when you do the maintenance effort compliance tool, it also determines your reimbursement. And one of the factors is money in. So it's expenses out, money in, and it's your net expense that's reimbursed. So it would be a wash in that regard. So it might almost be advantageous to not lease. I just wanted you to know that that was an option. Maybe not in writing, but verbally that has been said that was accepted.
I'm for it, I think.
Say they get 5 districts to, but mark them down. When are they, like, would this be open then for the 2026, 2027 school
That's what
year?
it
Is
says,
that the plan?
yes, that's the plan. I believe that's what it says in the agreement. Now, it could be such a thing that all the districts are discussing at my board meeting too, that are interested. You know, presumably it would be us, Sterling, JCC, Johnson Brock, Fall City potentially. I know Fall City's historically, in different administration, different philosophies, they've had the philosophy they're not gonna take kids off site. They're gonna figure out a way to service the kids on site. But they've got a new superintendent coming in next year too, so maybe that philosophy has changed.
But it is K through 12.
It does say that in there, I'm pretty sure, yes.
This says shall provide following services to the school district students needing in grades K through 6.
Oh, it does say that, okay. I remember it had been discussed both ways, because they know, especially that the lower ages is where we really have a void. All of the districts have a void. So, thank you for clarifying that.
But
What
that
page is that on?
wouldn't change the amount, I mean,
No. Well, the good news there is that we do actually have some other options for older kids. It's
Right.
the younger kids that we
because usually
really.
the other one was 6 through 12.
All right, we're still waiting on a motion, and we can split them up if you would like. Otherwise, we can do them all as one if you want to as well.
I will make the motion to approve the agreements between the Pawnee City Public Schools and the Educational Services Unit 4 as presented in item option 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Hope and a second by Mark. Any further discussion?
No.
Hope? Mark? Nope. The rest of the board? Okay, go ahead and we'll vote. Julia?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jason, yes. Hannah?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
And Hope?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. Last item on, well, actually, before we do our last item on the agenda, next Tuesday is our board retreat here at 6 p.m. with Marcia. Mr. Evans is also going to be here as well, so just to remind you guys, but now,
At 6, right?
at 6 p.m., correct. Now we are ready for the adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Hannah. Mark?
Yes.
Jason, yes. Hannah?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
And